remember the day that the woman who did the assessment, who said, "You have a stutter. There's no cure, but we can teach you some methods to you know, to live with it," something like that. "But we can't really help you. There's no cure. You're always going to have a stutter." And that was like, that was heavy news to get as a kid. Be like, you're never going to get over this. You're always going to stutter. You're never going to be able to speak fluently. It was like, that really sucked.
Today is International Stuttering Awareness Day. So I'm here with my husband, James Gallanders, aka Hubby Pants, to talk about stuttering and creating awareness. I have learned a lot about what it's like for him having a stutter, but now I am going to actually have him share with you what it is like. So my first question to you, my dear, first of all, thank you for coming and being open and sharing your experiences.
My pleasure.
And putting up with me, because it's not easy when you have a stutter and you're living with someone who likes to jump in and talk very fast. It's like, I'm adding insult to injury. I cut people off at the best of times, and when somebody has a stutter and they're waiting to get the words out and you're cutting them off, it's not good. So that's insight number one. And now I'm gonna let you say.
No, keep going. All right, ask away, let's talk.
Okay, well, first of all, how old were you when you first became aware that you had a stutter?
I think I was probably maybe around 8 years old, 6 to 8, around there. I knew you were going to ask this, so I thought about it. And my earliest memory of having a stutter was that I always did well academically. And I remember sitting in class and thinking, boy, I can read really well. I could read anything they threw at me. But for some reason, when I went to go read aloud, the words weren't coming out smoothly. And I remember just thinking, like, what's going on? What's wrong? I know what it says. I know how to say it. I know how to make the sounds, but for some reason it's just not working. And then I think it was the same year, the teacher was having us all take turns reading aloud. And when it became my turn, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I blocked so severely that I just couldn't get the words out, and I ended up running out of the room crying. And that's when they figured, okay, well, you know, he has a speech impediment. So I met with a guidance counselor, and they recognized that I knew the words, I knew how to make the sounds, but you know, for some reason I was having trouble. So I got put on a waiting list to see a pathologist, a speech pathologist. And that was like a year or two, you know, it was like a year just to see the pathologist, to do an assessment, to say, yep, you have a stutter. I'm like, okay, yeah, thanks. And then I had to wait another year after that to actually get treatment. And that didn't last very long. I only went a couple of times and we saw a lot of improvement, so you know, the feeling at the time was, okay, that's good, you know, you're fine.
So when you first realized that you have a stutter and that you were different from the other people in your class, what went through your head? I mean, obviously you were upset because you ran out of the room crying. So was this something that affected, would you say it affected your everyday life?
Certainly. It affected absolutely everything I did. I was a smart kid, and often I would know the answer, you know. But I wouldn't raise my hand because I was afraid that I couldn't get the words out. And that was frustrating. And even talking, to other kids in the schoolyard, and, kids can be mean, and so, some of them like, to pick on me or, to imitate me, and it just really sucked. It really sucked.
So, and yet you've told me stories about how you were president of, president of your high school?
Yeah, I was the president of student council.
Student council, sorry.
In high school, and the lead in the play, and the lead in the musical. I learned at a young age, I think I was around maybe grade 5, the teacher said we were going to have to give a speech. And I remember the previous year, no, it was in the 6th grade. I know the previous year I had given a speech and I read it off the cue cards, and it was like torture. And my heart was just pounding and I was sweating and it was awful. And so the next year they said, okay, everyone's going to have to give a speech again. And I was like, no way, man. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing it. So I hung around after class and I just said to my teacher, like, this is not happening. I'm not doing this. And she said, well, listen, maybe if you pick a topic that you can get really excited about and memorize it, maybe you'll be okay. Why don't you think about that? So I did, and I memorized it, and I did it, and I won for my class, which meant I had to compete against some kids from the other, other kids who were, in grade 6, I guess. And I won that.
Oh my goodness.
Which meant I had to compete in front of the school.
Were you nervous?
Yeah, but I think I was also excited because this was all very new to me, right? I mean, I had found my voice. For the first time, I was fluent.
And how, what was different? What was it because?
It was because I had memorized it and I found an emotional connection to the words. So it was no longer about looking at a word and trying to translate that word from a page into speech. It was an idea in my head that I was expressing, that I was sharing. I was telling a story. Right. And so I told my mom, I'm gonna, compete in front of the school. And she was like, oh my God. What are they doing? Like, I can't believe they're gonna let you do that. She thought, this is gonna be awful. This is just gonna be...
So she was nervous for you?
Yeah. Yeah. But she came and she watched, and I competed and I nailed it, and I won for my school, and I won every year after that, and I went on to compete all over Ontario. The Optimist Club of Ontario heard about me or read about me in the newspaper, and they asked me to participate in their oratorical contest. So I started doing that, and I won all kinds of awards all over the province. And so then the English teacher who taught drama at my public school was like, you have to be in my play. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I auditioned and I got the part, and then every year after that I did the plays and the musicals, and then I joined a community troupe at the Whitby Courthouse, and that's how I found my voice, because I couldn't read aloud in class, and I didn't really like to talk that much, but when I was playing a role, I could speak. I found my voice. So that's how I became an actor.
Right. Well, I think that's true about acting in general too. Like, I would tended to be shy, but when you're playing a different role, right, you can just kind of throw yourself in. You're basically hiding in that role. Mm-hmm. You're not you anymore.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been smooth performing in public either, right? I mean, no. I know you had that one experience that still kind of haunts you to this day.
Yeah, bring that up. Yeah, I mean, it's a constant battle. It's something that you deal with constantly. Even, I know that I've had days where I'm like, man, I can't speak today. And you'll say, well, I haven't heard you stutter at all. And I'm like, yeah, man, but I'm working my tail off. Yeah, I've learned a lot of tricks over the years. I've learned a lot of coping mechanisms. I can hide it really well.
Yeah,
but some days I can't.
You have one, so.
Yeah, no, lots of people, that I've known for years went, I didn't know you had a stutter. Yeah, because I'm awesome at hiding it. Yeah, so for the most part, you know, as an actor, I have managed to overcome it. It's not necessarily a word that I like to use because I haven't. I just manage it well. Yeah, for the most part, I've done, you know, entire films or series where nobody knows that I have a stutter, and then I've done other jobs where they certainly knew that I did have a stutter. And there was one play that I did in particular, The Glass Menagerie. I played the gentleman caller at the Grand in London, Ontario. And the gentleman caller wasn't necessarily a role that I felt like I had to play. In fact, I remember wanting to pass on the opportunity to audition for the role. I was like, I don't think I want to go in for this. It's, you know, it's a good role, but I don't know. But my girlfriend at the time was like, oh no, my God, you have to. You're perfect for it. You're perfect. And I thought, I think I am perfect for it.
Were you still feeling comfortable about doing plays at this point?
At that point I was, and it was my goal, you know, to continue doing at least a play a year, even though I was doing more and more on camera work. I think the previous year I played Romeo at MTC, and so I love the theater. That's where I started out. But I think the role was almost a little bit too close to home, because he talks about how he used to have an inferiority complex, but then he got into public speaking, and that's how he sort of came out of his shell. And I was like, that's essentially me. And then, as it turned out, my girlfriend at the time, who I lived with, they cast her as Laura, not knowing that we were a couple. So I think that added an extra layer to, I just didn't feel like I could get lost in that character, or that I could hide within that character. I was just naked. It was just me. And so that's that experience in that play is what I often refer to as the car accident, because I didn't win that battle. I lost it badly, and I stuttered severely every night in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. Severely stuttered. My first line when my character appears is, well, I didn't know Shakespeare had a sister. I didn't know Shakespeare had a sister. My first line. And how I said that line was, well, I didn't know Shakespeare had a sister? And on it went.
And what was the reaction from your peers and your co-stars that were working with you?
Well, they were great, you know.
The director.
They were very patient. I felt very bad for the director. I felt bad for, you know, the other actors who had to deal with it. You know, interestingly, the two local reviewers in the London area, because it was unmistakable, you couldn't miss it, mentioned it, and those two local reviewers said, well, they didn't like it. One said they thought it was heavy-handed, and the other one said it was, oh, what was the words that he used? It was artificial sounding. So he thought I didn't nail the stutter.
Oh.
He thought I didn't do the stutter.
Your stutter
well.
wasn't authentic enough.
No.
It was a bad
He didn't think I did the stutter well. And that was hilarious to me, because I was like, dude, you have no idea. I didn't do the stutter very well, apparently.
So in a way, though, you tricked people, because then they thought
they thought it was
They thought it was a
real
character choice.
But there was the one review that we got out of Toronto, in the Toronto Star, by Vit Wagner. He quite liked it. He thought it was a lovely choice. And so I thought, well, geez, I guess I dodged a bullet there. I don't know what night he went, because he thought it was a slight stutter, and I was like, geez, really? But I thought, phew, that's great. He just thought it was a slight stutter. Okay, great. Yeah, that was a choice. Yeah, I did it on purpose. But that was an awful experience, and afterwards I didn't act again on the stage for about 10 years. But about 2 years later, it was around the time that I was only doing on-camera work, somebody told me, hey, you know, there's an article about you in the Star and the Glass Menagerie, and I was like, what? That was like years ago. And I looked it up, and sure enough, Wagner talked about how there were 3 productions of the Glass Menagerie that year. One at the Tarragon with Martha Henry, one at the Royal Alex with Kiefer and his mom Shirley Douglas, and then there was ours. And he said, if at the time you asked me which one was most successful, I would have said the one at the Tarragon with Martha Henry. But he said, now I find myself almost 2 years later, he said the one that he remembered the most was our production, and he mentioned myself and Lisa Repa-Martel specifically, and
Nice.
and he said that it was one of his most memorable nights in the theater. And that, to me, that meant the world to me, because I thought, here was this awful train wreck of an experience, and it gave someone whose job it is to go to the theater at like every single day, and said it was one of his most memorable experiences in the theater. So I thought, wow, well, okay, some good, I guess, came out of that. But yeah, I had to think long and hard after that experience about if I had made the right decision, you know, to become an actor, because I just thought, I just murdered that.
Sure, I can see how stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, acting is stressful at the best times. People don't always realize the anxiety that goes into it. Auditioning alone, like, you're so great at auditioning. I get so anxious before auditions, but you, like, it's almost like do you feel like you have to work harder, like, to prove yourself because of the stutter? Is that like...
I've definitely always felt like I had to work harder than everybody else, because not only do I have to memorize the lines and, you know, do all the usual actor homework, I also have to come up with a way to, how am I going to get these words out of my face?
I want to go back just a little bit, because you've told me so many stories over the years that have made such an impression on me, because like, having to be a teenager is nerve-wracking enough as well, and then having a stutter on top of that, even little things like having to ask somebody out on a date.
Yeah, right.
And let's go back to our first date, actually. I did the most horrible thing. I made fun of his stutter.
She laughed at me.
I laughed at him, and I
So
mean,
mean.
this is something that happens to you, I know, all the
Yeah,
time.
I get laughed at a lot.
And probably more so for you, though, because, again, you don't have as obvious a stutter. It's obvious to you. And this is something that I've learned over the years. Like, people don't realize how hard you're working to get the words out, because you're not one that for some people it's more of an obvious stutter. But anyway, so on our first date, first of all, the number one point against me is because of my name. It's very hard to pronounce for most people.
ST's really hard for me. Stacy Mistitian.
You say it so well now.
Yeah, well, I've been practicing.
And then you were telling me about that you play squash and you couldn't get the words out, and I didn't think anything of it because I didn't even know you had a stutter. So I was just kind of like,
So he imitated me and said,
yeah.
squash, and I said, I have a stutter.
And that haunts
And
me
she
to this
felt
day.
bad.
That was, I feel so horrible that I did that.
It's okay.
And so
Turned out all right.
At least you know that, like, a lot of people, if they laugh, they're not doing it to be spiteful. But I think this is why people, everyone's against you. But
Yeah,
this is why
you
it's
know.
good to create awareness.
Yes, exactly. I mean, just last month, I was at a restaurant, and nowadays, if you go, I was on a patio, and nowadays, if you go anywhere, they need your name and your number. And saying my name has always been one of the hardest things ever. And, you know, my phone number. Those are things that you can't really escape. Like, it's not like I can, you know, my name is my name. My number is my number. And so I stuttered. And the waitress was like, Oh, don't worry about it. I know how you feel. And I just said, I have a stutter. And she
started crying.
No, she didn't really say anything else after that. It was fine. You know, I didn't want to be mean or, you know,
No,
like I wasn't angry. I was just like, I have a stutter. You don't need to laugh like that. Like I didn't think it was hilarious.
Well, it's not really funny to begin with.
Yeah, I
Somebody
didn't
forgets
think
their
it was
name.
funny, but so I was just explaining, like, you know, just so you know, I have a stutter, so that might happen again. So yeah, but it happens all the time, man.
What did you do? Remember, you told me the story about how you were asking a girl out on a date, and you.
Yeah. I wish you know, when I was a kid we had the technology that we have now, because there was a girl that I wanted to ask out on a date, or I just wanted to call her, and so I took my cassette recorder and I recorded myself saying, "Hi, can I talk to Karen, please?" or something like that. And so then I called rotary dial phone. And then
There's
when
no
somebody
texting. You can text
answered,
back then.
hit the play button. "Hi, is Karen?" Oh man, what a nightmare. Like, spent all night like angsting about this and thought, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And yeah, boy, it would have been really handy to just go, "Hey Karen, it's James. What's up?"
Right. Thank goodness for texting now.
Yeah.
Although that's a whole other thing that
Yeah.
can hide people's true personalities.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So, touching back on like just the creating awareness, so people aren't always going to necessarily laugh if somebody trips over their name. What would you want to impart on people to give them insight? What's the main...
Just generally, if you see someone having a hard time speaking, not to go, you know, to your default, you know, just listen, man, just listen. I saw a short the other day, I told you about. There was a girl in school, she's at a new school, and she said, and the teacher says, "I want everyone, you know, to stand up and, you know, to introduce themselves. And when you have a stutter, man, that's the scariest thing." I said in another post that now, as an actor, to survive read-throughs, I memorize my lines ahead of time, and then I look at the page, or, you know, I act like I'm reading, but I'm not. I'm reciting my lines. So I'm not actually reading. I'm not looking at the words. But the one thing that I'm not able to avoid is that, okay, let's all go around the table and let's all, you know, say your name and the character that you're playing. And still, like, that's when the heart just starts racing like mad.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, like, read-throughs, that's something that you do before you're going to do any script. Like, if you get a part, we did this for Degrassi as well, and it's exciting because you get to meet all the other cast members, the directors, the producers are all there around a table usually, and you're gonna like start reading the script. And so it's also, you get very nervous because you're performing in front of people essentially.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna get to hear you act out your part. So
anyway, yeah. So yeah, I saw this short where there was a girl who was asked, you know, to stand up and you know, to introduce herself, and she starts to go and then it cuts to, you know, her coming home that night, and her mom says, "How was school?" And she said, "I stuttered at school today." And she says, and nobody laughed. Nobody laughed.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, hopefully that's how it's going to be more in the future. By creating more awareness. So.
Exactly. Thanks, baby.
I love you.
I love you.